All right. So I think it's pretty important that I point out that this is probably going to be an incendiary video that we're watching. Ben Shapiro has stopped even trying to pretend that he doesn't hate trans people. This is just overt and pretty gross, pretty disgusting. But it is something that is culturally relevant and part of the current political landscape, especially how they're trying to basically direct an immense amount of hate and derision towards not just trans people, but also just outwardly anybody who is LGBT. And they do this specifically because they need to dehumanize somebody, because that is a step in control. So this is a video by Ben Shapiro called "They Are Lying to You." Let's go.
One of the big messages that the Democratic Party wishes to push these days is that you should transition your child. You should indoctrinate your kids with gender confusion, and then when they are predictably confused, you should transition them. One of the rationales they use for this is the lie that if you fail to affirm your child's new gender, well, then you are causing them to commit suicide.
I like the way that he starts this out with just an overt statement that Democrats want you, just anybody, regardless of like what is going on with your kid or like how your child might be identifying, that they want your kid to be trans. All children must be trans, which is ridiculous. What the fuck?
Really good piece over at realitiesLastStand.com, which is a Substack site, I believe. And Lior Sapir writes about this. He writes about the actual research with regard to all of the suicidality and
suicidality. Like suicidality. Fascinating. I guess that is actually technically a word. What the fuck? That is ridiculous. It sounds like a made-up word. Whatever. Oh, well, fucking egg on my face. Whatever, let's go.
Discrimination claims by the Democrats. Again, their claim is that if you are a man who believes you are a woman and you are suicidal, it's because people won't accept you. The evidence to back this is effectively non-existent.
That is not what it comes from. No. The self-destructive impulses that come from people that are suffering from gender dysphoria overwhelmingly originates from the fact that they feel an immense disconnect between themselves, how they feel, versus how they have to present and conduct themselves. Is that somewhat enforced and pressured by society? Sure. But this is an internal struggle. Okay? This is an internal struggle and a personal struggle, one that they have to find the way in which they can overcome this in some manner, a manner of treatment. And for many of those, that's going on a journey of a different type of identity and finding oneself. I don't necessarily think that is too dissimilar from somebody who has been living their life under pretenses that they are not comfortable with, that directly go against how they feel deeply inside. Moreover, I would say the older that you get, the more you have a more clear idea of who and what you want to be, and if you are even further forced into a box, I believe that pressure could be even higher. One of the reasons why younger people who are going through gender dysphoria might have it impacted so much more severely is because of the stresses of being that age and the responsibilities put onto you. I don't know if you guys, like, we look back at, like, our times as a kid with, like, rose-colored glasses, and we're like, man, it was great. Well, some of us do. Some of us had pretty bad childhoods. But being a kid sucks. It's not fun. I mean, yeah, you don't have to deal with, like, work and bills and shit like that. But it's not easy. It's tough. It's really fucking tough. And you just change to a different type of struggle when you eventually become an adult.
According to Lior Sapir, writing again at realitiesLastStand.com, the affirm or suicide mantra has become the central strategy of contemporary transgender activism. At times, it would seem that activists have little else in their rhetorical arsenal. Federal courts have used it to impose new policies on schools under Title IX. When Florida passed the Parental Rights in Education Act, a law that limits classroom discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation to age-appropriate circumstances, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg agreed with his husband, Chasen, that it would, quote-unquote, kill kids. Florida's law was in response to, among other things, books like Genderqueer, a Memoir.
Ben Shapiro is agreeing with this guy, saying that it's bad that their main tactic is combating suicide. What the fuck? What do you want to replace that with? What do you think should be the number one reason why we're actively trying to like fix this? I mean, like, can you think of a better reason why? I mean, like, than stopping people from like being miserable and then committing suicide? What the fuck? What the fuck, dude?
Which contains graphic depictions of oral sex appearing on school library shelves. The book's non-binary author, Maya Kababi, countered her book's presence in libraries was, quote, life-saving, which, again, is an amazing claim. It is life-saving to have a book in libraries showing graphic depictions of oral sex, according to the left. A few weeks later...
According to this one person. Yeah, this one person. But no, it's the left.
Transgender Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services, Rachel Levine, used the same word to justify the federal government's support for gender-affirming interventions.
Yeah.
Neither Levine nor President Biden, who has given his own imprimatur to the controversial practice, seem to care that Europe's most progressive welfare states have been moving in the opposite direction, placing strict limitations on the use of puberty blockers to treat adolescents in distress, presumably because of their gender.
That's not necessarily true either. I mean, one of the things, it's so funny that this is going to be called, this video is called They're Lying to You, and I can tell you right now, this is going to be full of nothing but fucking lies. One thing that they've been doing as a tactic, and they all got the same marching orders at the same time, you'll notice this, if you pay really close attention, all of the like right-wing dickbags that are constantly spouting off the same things over and over again, they'll all say it within the same 12 hours. They all get the fucking memo. Okay, this is our new tactic. This is where we're pivoting to. Now we need to make it seem like you can just go and talk to a doctor and say, I want you to perform surgery on me, and they'll just do it. I want those hormones, and they'll just fucking do it. No, there's a process, and it's not fucking easy. And sometimes there's a waiting list where people who are actually experiencing gender dysphoria, and their doctors agree, and they still have to wait before they can go and start taking hormones. Like, this happens a lot.
Scandinavians are not indifferent to teen suicide. Rather, they've examined the evidence behind the affirm or suicide claim and have found it wanting. Despite the unwaveringly confident manner in which these claims are often asserted, there is no good evidence that failing to affirm minors in their gender identity will increase the likelihood of them committing suicide.
Incorrect. Absolutely in-fucking-correct. And I don't know who the fuck this person is that wrote a random Substack or what their qualifications are. That, I mean, like, does he link it? Does Ben at least do the due diligence to link what he's reading? No, he doesn't. Benjamin, why? Why in the world, Benjamin, would you not link what you're reading so other people can see? But let me try and put it this way. I don't know who this person is, but it doesn't sound like they are actually very familiar with the literature. We have studies. We understand. People who dedicate their lives to understanding these issues overwhelmingly state that taking a proactive stance when people are experiencing, and they have verified by their doctor, gender dysphoria, that interventions save lives. We know that. The suicide rate drops dramatically. There are two main things that can really, really help when somebody is having to deal with this. Number one, perhaps a type of intervention. Maybe it's just hormones. Maybe it's just them embracing a different type of lifestyle where they can dress a different way and they feel more comfortable. Number two is familial and friendship support. Overwhelmingly, these things help. We know that. But you're reading some random Substack from some random dickhead, and that's your proof. Oh, okay.
That claim is based on a small handful of deeply flawed studies that at most find loose correlations between quote-unquote affirming interventions.
The science done by actual doctors, that's all bullshit, and we should listen to the Substack guy. Okay.
And improve mental health. Some find no reduction of suicide. A new study claims to find that puberty blockers actually increase the risk of suicide. Not only is the empirical basis for the affirm or suicide mantra shoddy at best, its dissemination is profoundly irresponsible. Such extreme rhetoric limits our ability to better understand and respond to mental health problems in vulnerable youth.
No, it doesn't. Why? How would that limit anything? The people who are researching this are still researching it. They're not like, oh, well, these studies are out, so then we're just not going to study it anymore? What the fuck are you talking about? And no, I do not have Ben sped up. If I speed Ben up, you can't understand what he's saying. This is normal speed Ben.
Itself contribute to the real and documented phenomenon of suicide contagion. If social Contagion is one of the rationales for increased LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign, command sign, option sign, control sign.
Very, very funny. Very, wow. Just a comedy genius.
Identity. If that is one of the rationales, the societal contagion we've been seeing, suicide is catching. I mean, this has been a long time social science finding, is that suicidality tends to also predict suicidality inside of groups. When you have a few people in a group who commit suicide, more people tend to commit suicide inside the larger group.
So you can catch suicide? That's a very bold claim. That's a bold, bold claim. Okay, so what I think is fascinating about this is, like, if you apply this to another group that experiences high rates of suicide, like combat veterans, what do you want to do about, combat veterans, and like looking into the suicidality of combat veterans? Would you take a strong stance against the thing that all science has proven is actually going to help because you read a fucking Substack? What the fuck, dude?
Part of the problem is the vagueness of the term suicidality, says Leon Sapir. He says there's a difference between thinking about suicide, attempting it, and actually doing it. Even within the first two categories, shades of gray prevail. A suicidal attempt, for instance, can mean climbing to a roof of a building without actually stepping onto the ledge. It can also mean surviving a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Women are far more likely to think about and attempt suicide. Men are much more likely to die by suicide. That's because men tend to use guns, by the way. Actual suicide is...
What the fuck? Jesus Christ. This is a very, very strange and I would say kind of inhuman way to be talking about this, but fuck it, whatever.
It's obviously more serious than suicidal attempts more than ideation. Human beings may go through periods of depression in which they contemplate suicide, even seriously. This doesn't mean they're at permanent risk for suicide. Gender activists commonly argue that roughly 4 in 10 transgender-identified youths attempt suicide when not socially and medically affirmed. Does this research bear out? The simple answer is no.
Yes, it does.
Firstly, surveys of TIY suicidality, trans-identified youth suicidality, rely on self-report, do very little to vet respondents when they say they attempted suicide. Secondly...
Oh, okay, so we should just not listen to them and instead use what metric, Mr. Genius?
Studies purporting to show that transgender-identified youth are at elevated risk of suicide tend to compare suicide rates in TIY with rates in non-TIY, a deeply misleading comparison.
What? Wait. Wait, so, okay, hang on. So the evidence that this is not good is that if you have somebody who has gender dysphoria and a group of people, they have gender dysphoria and say we'll take, in this case, teenagers, and you talk to them, and then you talk to teenagers that are not experiencing gender dysphoria, you should not compare those two? Do you know... Do you know how science works? How statistics work? What the fuck?
This is because TIY, especially among the new clinical cohort of rapid onset gender dysphoria teenagers, exhibit extraordinarily high rates of mental health problems, psychological comorbidities, quite apart from their gender-related distress.
Okay, now, so what? But that's literally what we're talking about. That's literally what we're fucking talking about. I see some of you guys talking about Hannah and Jake in the chat. I love them both. They're fucking great.
I would argue that comorbidity is indicative of an actual linkage. But whether you think it is or whether it isn't, the simple fact is that if you have depression and you also happen to be transgender, then saying that if we were just more accepting about the transgenderism, that you wouldn't commit suicide, obviously that's not true. You still have the depression.
What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me? If you have gender dysphoria and you're living in an oppressive situation, either your parents are not going to be very supportive, or you're in you're not in like Eugene. Like Eugene, it's a lot easier to be fucking trans here than it is in, say, Mobile, okay? Then that might possibly, like people all around you think that how you feel and you hide is wrong and sinful or whatever. That could probably make you pretty fucking depressed. He's doing it the exact fucking opposite way. Like, maybe you're trans because you're depressed, not you're depressed because you're trans, and you live in a situation where you're not going to feel supported. What the fuck? I don't know how anybody thinks this guy is fucking intelligent, or at least not lying constantly.
To the extent proponents of the gender-affirming approach recognize these comorbidities, writes Shapiro, they regard them as the product of social hostility and lack of acceptance, though oddly, they also claim rapidly rising rates of transgender identification are the result of a society increasingly accepting transgender identity.
Yes, and that's good and that's based.
But no evidence supports this hypothesis. Mounting evidence vitiates it. Rapid onset gender dysphoria teens are known to have very high rates of anxiety, depression, history of sexual trauma, anorexia, and eating disorders, all of which typically precede gender-related distress.
No. It's very, very simple. Look, I'm not going to talk about the concept of potentially sexual assault or anything like that, because honestly, that's fucking disgusting, and he shouldn't be talking about that either. Neither of us are fucking doctors. Neither of us are trauma experts, and it's fucking gross to start weaponizing that kind of a thing. But think about it like this. Gender dysphoria, okay? Gender dysphoria deals with the disconnect between the way that you feel on the inside versus the way you get to express the way your body is. Why wouldn't you also manifest other body dysmorphia disorders, things that are like eating disorders? That does not seem like a fucking big leap to me. And as far as like these things preceding gender dysphoria, well, how do you nobody on this fucking planet has ever woken up and been like, I was totally fine yesterday, and now today I know that I am trans. Usually what happens is it's a slow progression of feeling some sort of disconnect. This can manifest in a lot of different ways until eventually maybe you finally find the fucking words for it. And maybe that is what it is, and maybe it's not. But it's something that everybody should be encouraged to explore. Be whoever the fuck you want to be. I legitimately believe, like, I don't give a shit if somebody wants to change their gender. It doesn't matter to me at all. I don't care if somebody decides that they just want to express in a completely unique way, dress whatever way they want to dress, express themselves whatever they want to express. I don't give a fuck, because that's freedom. That's freedom of choice and freedom of expression. People should be able to be whoever the fuck they want to be. Simple as that. But this is just absolutely fucking bananas.
As we've learned from detransitioners, many continue to experience these problems long after they've gone under the knife. According to a review of the UK's Gender Identity Development Service, roughly 1 out of 3 girls seeking gender transition has autism. A significant finding, considering that being in the wrong body might provide these teenagers with a convenient explanation for social isolation. While it is true suicidal behavior is much more likely...
Wait, is he trying to say that gender dysphoria can create autism, or autism can create gender dysphoria? What the fuck? What in the fucking fuck? What?
Among trans-identified youth, rates of actual suicide are extremely low within the population. There's no basis for believing that affirming them with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries reduce these rates even further.
Except all
Importantly,
established literature.
when researchers compare trans-identified youth with non-trans-identified youth with similar mental health profiles, the disparities in suicidal behavior reduced considerably, suggesting that it's not lack of gender affirmation that's the problem.
Wait. Okay, first of all, I need to know what exactly in that study they classify as somebody having a similar mental state. What did he say? Mental state? Here, I want to make sure I get this right. Hang on.
Compare trans-identified youth with non-trans-identified youth with similar mental health profiles. The disparity...
Similar mental health profiles. I would really like to know, and it's too bad that Ben doesn't want us to see what he's reading, but I would really like to know how they determined similar mental profiles. Huh. That's interesting. That's so interesting. There's a link-ish between autism and trans, but that's because gender roles are more abstract. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. I mean, it's the thing is like you can have a conversation where we can discuss the potential the potential broadening of people's perspectives versus like clinically diagnosed autistic people, not self-diagnosed, but clinically diagnosed autistic people with clinically diagnosed gender dysphoria. And maybe there's something there, but like the trans people in America are like less than 1%. Maybe it's around 1%. I'm not sure. And that to that degree of a small sample size, the smaller sample size of those who might have autism, I don't know. That's something that if we want to look into that, we're gonna have to look at actual like experts in the field, not Ben Shapiro.
In suicidal behavior reduced considerably, suggesting that it's not lack of gender affirmation that's the problem. The gold standard for finding a causal relationship between quote-unquote affirming medicine and suicide would be the randomized controlled trial. To date, no randomized controlled trial has ever been conducted to study the effects of puberty blockers on mental health.
You want to do a randomized clinical trial with puberty blockers? You want to experiment on kids? There are some moral issues surrounding this idea of utilizing that form of testing. But at the same time, like, the only way in which you can agree with what Ben Shapiro is saying is you have to believe that everybody who's working on this, that is a doctor or a research scientist that have dedicated their lives to this sort of thing, are just wrong. And they're all politically motivated. And they've all lied in everything that they fucking said. And that this random Substack person and Ben know better. And that's a big fucking leap.
Of gender-distressed youth. For this reason, the FDA has never approved the use of Lupron or other puberty suppressants for gender dysphoria. Claims about the reversibility of puberty blockers, which are essential to gender-affirming advocates' ethical case for allowing kids to use them, rely entirely on referencing the drug's original purpose, which is treating precocious puberty. As for their safety, the risks of puberty blockers are not fully known, but are thought to include
Okay. So now we're going to get into the risks of puberty blockers, which is something that I didn't understand for a long time, a few years back. I'm a little bit better versed on it now, but I'm by no means an expert. But I love how he's reading, this dude writes like Ben Shapiro speaks. The side effects from it, which are not yet known, which means there aren't really any yet. Because we haven't found any. It's not like we haven't studied it. We have, but yeah, so far nothing. But could be. Ooh. And if this and somebody's mentioning, yeah, a lot of this sounds like anti-vaxxer stuff, it's because this is the same shit. It's the same shit. They want something to be true, and so they make up a reason why it has to be true.
Cognitive impairment and bone malformation. It's becoming increasingly clear another major risk is iatrogenesis, meaning the use of puberty blockers to treat gender dysphoria virtually guarantees the persistence of the condition and continuation of the patient to more extreme and risky types of interventions, right? Once you get on the puberty blockers, you tend to then move on to surgeries, and that is significantly more damaging.
I would love to see some data on that. I would love to. And I would look it up, and I would see what this has to say. If only Ben included his sources in the description of his video. But that's not what he's here for. He's not here to actually convince anybody. He's here, and this video is only here to service and to pump the fucking dick of the people who already believe what he's saying. That's it. That's all there is. This is all like emotional daycare for boomers who are scared of trans people. That's what this is for. That's what most of the people that I cover on my second channel, that's all they do. That's their sole fucking purpose. And they make a lot of fucking money doing it, catering to the fragile fucking feelings of scared ass grown fucking adults. That's it.
It's a very long piece, and it is worth the read. But the bottom line is, according to Leon Sapir, who is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, we shouldn't hold out hope the activists will actually be accurate about any of this, because the suicide threat has been their way of achieving their goals. But the reality is that these...
Wait. See, the thing is they need the suicide so that they can get their goals. It's not because they're trying to prevent people, human beings, from living horrible, miserable lives and then taking their own lives. Nah. But also, isn't that kind of like a self-defeating fucking argument? Isn't it? Like, you need people to be suicidal to be able to get your politics to go. Why would you then want people to stop being so suicidal? That doesn't make any fucking sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. Like, what the fuck, dude? How is that even a remotely logical claim? It's just bizarre. Absolutely fucking weird. I'm only going to give this another 30 seconds, then I'm fucking done with this piece of shit.
Suicide studies do not support their position. And taking the therapeutic focus off of gender without completely excluding gender from the picture would actually help. But they're not going to do any of this stuff because, again, it's a propaganda tool on behalf of the left. It is performative. It is not about helping kids. And by the way, if you deliberately confuse hundreds of thousands, millions of kids on this stuff, you are subjecting them to a much worse life.
How the fuck do you know? Again, that does not track with established research. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. Sorry, Bubba. I want to see, is he still reading he's still reading the article all the way up until like the end of the video. It's so lazy shit dick, okay? Like, I mean, I know what I'm doing with this is pretty lazy and shit dick, but I mean, that's kind of the point. I'm just venting and showing how easy it is to be a fucking grifter. But like, it's so fucking weird. Like, he can't even it would be so much easier to get the citations that he's trying to read if he'd even just show the article. But instead, no, it's just this fucking, this twerp sitting there aggressively reading a fucking article. And I swear to God, it's so bullshit. Ben Shapiro is an emotional nanny for scared, shitty people. And that's all there is to it. Otherwise, if any of this had to do with intellectualism, if any of this had to do with data, of understanding the issue with any kind of nuance at all, he would be open and transparent with exactly what he's citing, exactly what he's trying to reference. But he's not. So I would love to see some comments on this video of people being like, well, you're not doing the due diligence to counter his claims. What claims? Show me the actual claims that he's trying to read from. And actually, honestly, no, that's not your fucking job. That's Ben's job. That's Ben's job. And Ben is bad at his job as far as an intellectual. He's, however, very good at his job at being a low-rent, low-effort, shit-dick fucking propagandist. And that's all I got to say about that.